Yeah, this is a class on biblical imagery. And so what Keenan and I strive to do each Sunday is take certain images that we read across in the Bible. And these are images that we discover in everyday life. And we want to unpack those images. We want to understand what they are first and foremost. And then we want to understand how God is using those images to communicate to us through those images. So a lot of times there's a literal meaning. Of course, we have to first understand the literal understanding of a word. And then we also will find and discover as we read through our Bible that there is a figurative meaning, layer, or metaphor, or archetype applied to a person or an image. So that's our class, and that's what we continue to work at week after week. And this week, we're going to do a kind of compare and contrast. I'm going to teach on the topic of pride. And by contrast, Keenan is going to look at humility. And we'll both have a character study in there as well. But let us open with a word of prayer. Good and gracious God, we thank you for life. Even as we feel our hearts beating and our chest rising and falling, we know that it all comes from you, that you sustain us each moment, that you invite us to experience the fullness of life, as you've told us in your word. And that comes through knowing you, through your Son Jesus. God, we thank you for the Bible. We thank you for how you communicate to us through it. And we ask for your Holy Spirit to be our primary teacher this morning. In Christ's name, amen. So the word pride, I always like to start with a definition. And so before I share the definitions that I've studied and come across, I always like to give you the opportunity first to say, how would you define the word pride? What is it? What is pride?
Thinking too much about yourself.
Okay, thinking too much about yourself. Would anybody add to that?
Haughty.
Haughty, yes.
I like the old saying that all glory is fleeting.
All glory is fleeting.
So that your pride is useless. What are you going to do next?
Mm.
Are you going to do something better or as good? Or you know?
So you're touching on a part of pride in that it is a momentary, the time of it, of experiencing it is very short.
It should be.
Is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
Great. Anybody else want to add? Haughty, thinking too highly of yourself. There's a moment of what are you going to do next to raise that bar even higher?
Dallas Willard gives 3 things to do to get rid of pride. And the first is stop pretending to be who you know you're not.
Stop pretending to be who you know you're not. Yeah, that's great. Welcome, Daniel. Let me give you what Google says. I usually go to Google and then I go to the Hebrew and the Greek. Google, if you just punch in pride, you'll get 2 definitions. The first is a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements, the achievements of those with whom one is closely associated, or from qualities or possessions that are widely admired. That's in a positive sense, I think. The second definition ties into that really short. It just says consciousness of one's own dignity. You have pride in yourself. You're aware of the dignity that you have, of what it means for you to be alive. So by Google's definition, pride kind of is painted in the positive light. I don't really hear the negative tone in that definition of pride. The word pride occurs 60 times in the NASB version of the Bible. The Hebrew word gavah, meaning to be high, that is vertically high, to be made lofty, to be exalted, to mount up, or to be proud, gavah. And then you also have gaon, meaning majestic, exaltation, pride in a positive sense, but also in the negative sense, which we might use the word arrogance. And I'm going to share just two verses that you can hear the positive and the negative. First in Job 35:12. There they cry out, but he does not answer because of the pride of evil people. I think that is more the definition that we are more kind of naturally go to. We usually hear pride in the negative sense, don't we? In the positive, 2 Chronicles 17:6, he took great pride in the ways of the Lord, and again removed the high places and the Asherim from Judah. So just, what does it mean to take pride in the Lord? Well, that's not a negative thing at all, right? That's ascribing majesty and honor, taking pride in God's achievements and who God is. Now in the Greek, we have huper ephanera. Huper ephanera, meaning pride, haughtiness, arrogance. That's the first definition. Or two, the character of one who, with a swollen estimate of his own powers or merits, looks down on others and even treats them with insolence and contempt. So you're getting a lot of the sting of the negative use of pride in the Greek and the way it's used there. I'm going to share with you from Mark chapter 7, and I realize I left the verses out, so little homework for you. Go dig in Mark chapter 7 and you'll find where this is. But and he was saying, and this is Jesus speaking, that which comes out of the person, a little bit of context, Pharisees and the like are critiquing Jesus and his disciples. Hey, you didn't wash your hands before eating. You're unclean. And Jesus is saying, no, here's what is actually unclean about humankind. That which comes out of the person, that is what defiles the person. For from within, out of the hearts of people, come the evil thoughts, acts of sexual immorality, thefts, murders, acts of adultery, deeds of greed, wickedness, deceit, indecent behavior, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the person. Jesus speaking there. So here Jesus lists this whole character trait, a whole list of these different things, of which pride is mentioned in the negative sense, perhaps in the extreme negative, right? Labeling it as evil, that evil that comes from within. Let me ask you, have you ever had a swollen estimate of your own powers or merits before? Why are you chuckling, Eric?
Maybe one.
We all have, right? Yeah, it's easy to do, isn't it? To have pride in a positive sense, that is, again, think of that first definition, I think from Google, to have deep pleasure in your own achievement while also being conscious of your dignity. That is a good thing. You don't want somebody walking around thinking that they're worth nothing, right? You have very low self-esteem, depression, those kinds of things can come from that. You want to have a healthy understanding of what it means to be made in the image of God and the value that you have. But, so you have that positive sense of who you are, deep pleasure in your own achievement. A lot of times we can think of, well, if you've graduated something, maybe college or a master's program, maybe you became a lawyer. Maybe you were an officer in the military. Maybe you were a doctor or something that really carries some weight in our society. It gives you a sense of deep satisfaction and accomplishment. And I think you should feel that positive sense of the word pride in seeing the result of your efforts that you've worked hard and diligently for. But the warning here, I think, is that pride is really a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's kind of what you're getting at, Eric. That the moment you feel that sense of accomplishment, that you go too far, and now it's been only about you, exalting yourself. And so you take too much pleasure in yourself, you overestimate your power and your merit. Well, what's the result of that? What happens when someone accomplishes a great thing but then takes pride in the negative sense? What happens?
Pride goeth before the fall.
Yeah, sure. Pride goes before the fall. Absolutely. We could think of many examples of that in society, of leaders, of athletes, of prominent persons who we have looked up to and who now we look down on, right? Isn't that how that works? The worst result being that your ability to view other human beings as equally important and valuable, right? Because we mentioned last week as we talked about life, humans are made in the image of God. That means you have dignity, you have value. But when you let your pride and your sense of accomplishment go too far, then you are hindered, you become blinded, in a manner of speaking. You malfunction. That is, mal meaning bad. You function badly. If you were a car part, maybe you'd be misfiring or something, right? You're not running on all cylinders the way you're meant to be. You function badly, you're defiled, you're marred, you're spoiled, you're no longer living into that fullness of life that God has for you with your Creator and with your neighbor. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because you've allowed that sense of accomplishment to be about you. You've forgotten God.
The source.
This actually ties really well into our current sermon series in worship. I think it does. At least I can see the connections. So let me do a quick character study. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You'll probably pick up on it. Isaiah 14, 12 to 15 says, "How you are fallen from heaven, O shining star, son of the morning. You have been thrown down to the earth, you who destroyed the nations of the world. For you said to yourself, I will ascend to heaven and set my throne above God's stars. I will preside on the mountain of the gods far away in the north. I will climb to the highest heavens and be like the Most High. Instead, you will be brought down to the place of the dead, down to its lowest depths." Any
Lucifer.
thoughts? Yes. Didn't take long to guess who we're talking about, right? The archangel or the archetype. Well, he might be referred to as the archangel as well.
And the
Lucifer.
fascinating thing about it is, so the morning star, the reason why it's seen as an arrogant star is because it's the last star that disappears. So it's in the morning when the sun comes up and the star is still hanging on to its place in the sky. And so it's seen as this arrogant, trying to usurp the sun and not going away with the rest of the stars.
What a powerful image that is.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. Pretty cool.
Thank you for a little bit of clarity on that image of the morning star. We hear a little bit more in Ezekiel 28, 12 to 17. "Son of man, sing this funeral song for the king of Tyre. Give him this message from the sovereign Lord." And oftentimes these prophets will do that, right? They'll speak to Israel, but they will speak to Israel as if, well, you're being treated as Lucifer, right? "You were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and exquisite in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Your clothing was adorned with every precious stone. Red carnelian," I'm taking a guess at that word there. I've not seen that one before. "Pale green peridot, white moonstone, blue-green beryl, onyx, green jasper, blue lapis lazuli, turquoise, and emerald, all beautifully crafted for you and set in fine gold. They were given to you on the day you were created. I ordained and anointed you as the mighty angelic guardian. You had access to the holy mountain of God and walked among the stones of fire. You were blameless in all you did from the day you were created until the day evil was found in you. Your rich commerce led you to violence and you sinned. So I banished you in disgrace from the mountain of God. I expelled you, O mighty guardian, from your place among the stones of fire. Your heart was filled with
Pride.
pride because of all your beauty. Your wisdom was corrupted by your love of splendor. So I threw you to the ground and exposed you to the curious gaze of kings. End quote. That's Ezekiel 28:12-17. Another image of that evil being found in even, we'll say, an angelic and otherworldly, a spiritual created being. One could argue this is the most beautiful, majestic creature ever to be made, whether in our created world as we know it or even in the angelic heavenly realms. This is the most beautiful creature, and pride was found in him. And as a result, he was banished and disgraced. He was expelled from the mountain of God, thrown down, brought low to the place of the dead, to its lowest depths. And so, I'm curious if you've picked up on the vertical theme. There's a vertical theme here associated with pride.
And even so pride itself is talking about the chemical kind of states that are in human brains that we feel these senses, and that they translate to words that we then use pride to describe them. And so like even the hierarchical nature of pride is that it's part of the sadness system of your affective biology, or your motivational system. So anxiety is the whole sadness system. So when you have pride, you have higher serotonin, you have higher dopamine, you have higher endorphins in your brain. And if you're a lobster feeling prideful, it's because you've won a bunch of battles, and your elevated sense of self-worth arises up, and it will cause you to be a little bit more risk-taking and do all sorts of... So there's this connection of the low and high, hierarchical, in how people feel where their place is, because sadness system's all about your place in the family unit, in the societal group that you're in. And your dopamine levels are associated with how you feel in your group. And these chemicals are what kind of support the feelings of pride and connection, all these things. But what's interesting, if you have too much serotonin, then you start to have lower empathy for others, and you start to be agitated. So it's kind of fascinating how the biology connects to the note of high and low is hierarchical in the way that the biology develops.
It's not just social, is what I hear you saying. It's not just experienced.
It's literally
It's something you feel in yourself. Your biology is doing it, right? So think through this real quick, So either by one's own work or accomplishments, and with the Olympics just kind of closing recently this past year, I think of an Olympic athlete who's won gold. Shouldn't they feel pride standing on the podium, the highest podium at that? Or by the work of someone else. That is, let's say God gave you the most beautiful face in all the earth, then you get to be a model. Or let's say God gave you strength so great you're the strongest man. Or maybe he gave you the best football ability, and I hear football and I think soccer, so I'm thinking like Cristiano Ronaldo and those folks. Maybe you're thinking Tom Brady with his moniker of the GOAT. However we want to think about pride and being elevated, we as humans can work hard and diligently with the gifts that God has instilled within us, and we should do that. When we do so, we bring honor to God. We experience pride in a good sense of living life to the fullest. Jesus said what last week? I came that they would have life, and life to the fullest. But that accomplishment becomes jeopardized when we begin to think too highly of ourselves. We forget God. We forget the image of God in others. And I think that's what you're getting at, Daniel, where your pride gets so high that all of a sudden you look at other human beings with disdain. Get away from me, filth. You're not worthy to be in this room, to breathe the air I breathe, whatever. So pride is a slippery slope. It comes before the fall, It doesn't matter what good you've done, what great honor you've won, what stunning achievement you've accomplished. If you make it about you or yourself alone, then you are going to end up alone. Pride is ironic in the Bible. And we can think of many other characters, human beings who lived lives that experienced the same that this archetype individual of Lucifer has experienced. Think of King Saul. Think of King Nebuchadnezzar. Think of King Uzziah. Or the Pharisee who boasted about his own righteousness. Remember Jesus telling that parable? Think of King David. Or Peter, who said, I would never desert you, Jesus, only to desert him. Or even the nation of Israel, right? We're God's chosen people. And yet they disobey and they're exiled. So as we think about pride, the feeling of dignity is something that we should have. We should have that sense of being made in the image of God is a good thing to be conscious of. But rather, may we carry ourselves with a different posture, perhaps. One like Jesus, who said in Matthew 20, verses 25 to 28, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you it will be different. If you're going to follow Jesus, it's going to be different. Whoever wants to be leader among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to do what?
Serve.
But to serve others and to give his life for others. What a picture of humility. May God give us awareness of our own selves and a spirit of humility. And let's unpack humility more, Keenan. I'll invite you up to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you.